Most running injuries don't happen because you ran too much overall, they happen because of one run that was too big. And according to a large study of more than 5,000 runners, there's one simple rule that dramatically reduces your injury risk. If you've ever had a running injury, whether it's Achilles pain, shin splints, or a stubborn knee problem, you'll know how frustrating it can be. You're training consistently, feeling good, and then suddenly something breaks down and your season is disrupted. In this video, I'm going to explain what a large new study of over 5,000 runners discovered about the sessions most likely to cause injuries, and the simple rule you can use to keep your training progressing safely. What's interesting is that this study didn't find weekly mileage increases to be the biggest problem. It showed that injuries tend to come from doing one run that pushes your body beyond what it was currently used to. Many runners assume injuries happen because they're doing too many miles each week, so the common advice becomes, don't increase your weekly mileage by more than 10%. And there is some merit in that idea. But in reality, plenty of injuries still occur even when runners do follow that advice. A 2025 study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine followed more than 5,200 runners using Garmin data to examine exactly what training sessions led to injuries. What they found was really revealing. The biggest risk appeared when a runner completed a single run that exceeded their longest run from the previous 30 days by more than 10%. And that was even when their weekly mileage looked sensible. When runners stayed within that range, meaning the run was no more than 10% longer than their previous longest run, injury risk stayed lowest. So the most important rule for injury prevention is surprisingly simple. Avoid sudden jumps in the distance of a single run. Instead, let your longest run or your toughest run progress gradually over time. Long runs place the biggest mechanical stress on the body. That means your muscles, tendons, joints, and connective tissue all experience repeated loading for much longer than usual. If your body hasn't adapted to that load yet, problems can develop quickly. In the study, researchers compared runners who increased their longest run gradually with those who introduced a sudden jump. Even with a relatively small spike of 10 to 30% beyond the previous long run, injury risk increased by around 64%. That's a huge difference from what many runners expect. And importantly, the study showed that weekly mileage changes weren't as strongly associated with injuries. It was the single session spike that mattered most. So the practical takeaway is that your body adapts best when your longest run progresses slowly and predictably. Think of it as building durability in layers. Each long run becomes the foundation for the next one. Many runners accidentally break this rule without realizing. This happens after a few missed training weeks, a holiday or illness, joining a group run that goes further than usual, starting a new training plan, and suddenly that weekend run becomes far longer than anything you've done recently. This has happened to me in the past, especially when I've arranged to run with other people, and that run has been faster or longer than I anticipated. I really enjoy those kinds of runs, but I usually pay a price for it afterwards. The reason it's a problem is because your body doesn't remember what you did 6 months ago. What matters most is what you've done in the past few weeks. The study specifically looked at the longest run in the previous 30 days as the reference point. So if your longest run recently was 10 kilometers or 6 miles, jumping to 13 kilometers or 8 miles might feel reasonable. But biologically, that's a large spike in load, even if 6 months ago you were running much further during your longest runs. A safer progression for your longest run might look something like this. 10k one week, next week 11k, the next week 12k, the next week 13 kilometers. These small steps give your tendons and muscles more time to adapt. Many athletes worry that increasing distance slowly will limit their progress, but the opposite is actually true. For many athletes, the biggest obstacle to long-term improvement is injury. If a runner stays healthy, they can train consistently for months and years. Over time, that consistency really adds up. But if injuries repeatedly interrupt your training, your fitness gains reset again and again. It's almost always better to progress slightly slower and stay healthy than to push too hard and lose weeks of training. Another interesting point from the study was that while 10% was said to be a safe threshold, slightly smaller increases in distance of around 5% provide an even greater margin of safety. And that's especially important for older athletes or those returning from injury. Once you understand this principle, it becomes much easier to structure your training week. If you'd like to see exactly how that looks across a full training plan, I've tried to structure it in a similar way in my running and triathlon training plans. They range from 8 to 48 weeks, and the longer plans have a more gradual rate of progression. If you only give yourself 8 or 12 weeks to prepare for a big race, your training usually has to ramp up faster because there simply isn't as much time to get fit. So if you're injury prone, a longer, more gradual training plan is usually a better idea. You can check them out at myprocoach.net or via the link in the description. They're designed to be affordable, and they include email coach support for whenever you need guidance. So if you remember just one thing from this video, make it this. Most running injuries don't come from doing too much overall, they come from one run that's too big for where your body is right now. If you keep your longest run progressing slowly and gradually, you'll dramatically reduce the risk of overuse injuries. If you've experienced a running injury before, I'd be curious to hear what caused it. Please let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, you'll enjoy the one on screen right now. You might also find my Improve Your Running playlist useful, where I cover training, technique, and injury prevention in more detail. And finally, if you enjoy these coaching videos, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.